I'm going to talk about choosing which fingers to play when we're playing chords. I've mentioned in a previous video that quite often, more often than not, chords can be played in different ways. So we can achieve playing an E chord, an A chord, a G chord in a few different ways in terms of where we put the notes on the guitar. I've not really mentioned about choosing fingers. It's not come up yet, but I did get asked, I got a message getting asked a question on one of the videos that I've done about why I played a certain chord in a certain way, and would it not be easier to do it another way. So that's the reason why I thought it might be interesting. I thought about it, I answered the question. It was a message, so it wasn't on my comments, but I thought it's an interesting topic and something that I might be able to share with you and shed a little bit of light on the subject. The actual chord in question was the D with the F sharp root note that I used in a recent video of playing Numb by Linkin Park, and I was asked why I did it that way. In particular, that chord I mentioned in the video, I wrapped my thumb over the top to get the root note of it. So why have I done that when there is other ways of playing it? So that's what I'm talking about in this video. If you look at a chord chart, I've got one here. So basically, you probably can't see it so well on the camera focus, but you'll have seen these things. You know, Google a chord chart or look on your phone app. Yeah, you can see them. It'll give you your chords, so you can learn your chords. Often it'll give you different ways of playing the chords in different positions, and sometimes, and then this is just a basic beginner's chord chart, it'll give you the same chord and different ways of fingering the same chord, for some of the chords. So this is about how we choose which fingers to use to play the chord. We have to play, if we're told to play an A chord, we've got to play an A chord. It's non-negotiable. G chord, we've got to play a G chord. We've got to get the notes correct, but there's a few different ways we can approach it. So this isn't about changing the chord to something else. This is about how we can play the chords using our fingers. And when I talk about our fingers on our hands, that's going to become really important in relation to how I answered the question that I was asked. So one of the most basic chords when you're first starting off, I'll use an E minor as an example, an E minor chord. So to play the E minor chord, I need to play, I'm going to strum across all my 6 strings, and I'm going to play the 2nd fret on my A string and my D string. All the other strings are open, so I've only got to fret 2 notes. So just as a quick example, there's my E minor chord. I'm using my 1st and my 2nd fingers to play those notes. If I wanted to, I could use my 2nd and 3rd fingers. It sounds identical, same chord. I could even use my 3rd and my 4th fingers. Or I could even mix it up, use my 1st and my 3rd fingers, or my 2nd and my 4th fingers. For that particular chord, just played on its own, without the context of a song, I can pretty much use any combination of my fingers in my hand. I could even probably mix them and play it backwards in a non-conventional way. I won't do that. But you get the idea that I can choose more or less any combination of fingers that I want to use to play that chord. So, how do we know which are going to be the right fingers to use for the chord? When the chord's played on its own, we don't necessarily know. It might tell us on the chord sheet, on the sheet that I just showed you. It does give you little numbers suggesting which fingers to play for it. When you're playing the chord in the context of a song, you might want to think about the chords that come before and after it, if you've got different options. In one of the songs that I've done, it was Sweet Child of Mine by Guns N' Roses, there was a chord called a C add 9. Now in that chord, the most basic, probably the first way it shows you to play a C add 9 would be to go from a normal C chord and then add the extra note, the 9th note, that's why it's called a C add 9. You just put your little finger on, you can hear the difference, to create a different chord. So that'll probably be the standard way of playing a C add 9, or at least the first way that you'd learn to play it. So if you're just playing, let's say for example, fingerstyle guitar, the standard C add 9 shape and fingering is really good, because playing it that way allows you to remove that finger at will and put it back on, and just play around the basic C chord. Something to that effect. So that works really well for that context of the song that you're playing. In the Guns N' Roses video that I did, Sweet Child of Mine, we're not playing that way, we're playing strumming, and I talked about the chord that comes before it, which was a D chord, and the chord that comes after it, a G chord. Now, I also showed those two different ways of playing it, the normal, the first position, C add 9, and a different way where I use different fingering, like that, the second way of playing it. Now, I suggested playing it that way because it's less work for us to do. I'm quite happy and comfortable playing that C add 9 chord either of those two ways, but in the context of the song, because I'm going from a D chord, it's easier for me just to shift my two fingers up to make the C add 9 and then up again to make the G, rather than having to do a full position shift to your ordinary open C position. So that's when we've got the choice. When we're comfortable playing the chord either way, we choose the one that's simplest for us in the context of the song. Now back to the question that I was asked, why did I play my D with the F sharp bass or the F sharp root note in the Linkin Park song, that chord? The question was, why didn't I just use a bar and then play a C chord, a normal C chord from that bar? You'll see why when I play it now. I've almost got it right, but it doesn't sound very good because I'm not playing it very well. Why am I not playing it very well? That comes down to me. It's not because I haven't practiced it, it's not because I can't be bothered learning it that way. I'm quite comfortable with bar chords, I'm quite comfortable playing a full bar chord, major or minor or whatever, so I've no problem playing bar chords, but that particular chord I find difficult playing in the bar position rather than the over the thumb. And it made me think about, why is that? Why have I been struggling with that chord? And that comes down to a me thing with my hands. I've got a couple of injuries on my fingers. I've got a couple of fingers that have been broken, one's been pinned, it was quite badly done, and my second finger on my fretting hand, I can't close any more than that. I physically cannot do that. So that chord, that D with the F sharp bass, you can see immediately like I need to try and get my second finger into that position and then put those up there. It's just something that I cannot do. I physically cannot do it. So it's not an excuse. The message and the point that I'm making is that if something like that's happened, if your hands aren't perfect, because mine aren't, that doesn't stop you from playing. You can find another solution to it. My solution was using the over the top with the thumb method, which sounds a lot cleaner because I'm able to do that a lot easier. That comes a lot more natural to me. That might not be the easiest way for you. If you can reach it the other way, playing a bar with a normal C shape, that may be the easier way to play it for you. On a more general point, even if you don't have any issues as such with your hands, everybody's body's different. I've got a couple of students that I work with in person, and I'm going to use two exact opposites here. I've got one guy that's like, he's quite a big guy, he's bigger than me, his hands are quite big. One of the things that he struggles with is, because his fingers are quite big as a big guy, is the intricacy. Let's say for example an A chord, getting those three fingers together to form an A chord. To start off with, when I started working with him, I suggested just to get going, just to get started, using a different fingering. Instead of using 1, 2, 3, we use 2, 3, 4, because your little finger's smaller. and it fits in that gap a little bit easier. It's not the best way, it's not necessarily the way it shows it on the chord chart, but it's a workaround to be able to get you playing. On the other end of the spectrum, I work with a lady who's very petite and has got very, very small hands, and one of the things that she struggles with is stretch. So because her hands are very small, obviously stretching for her body is a lot more difficult than if you've got bigger hands. The big guy who was struggling to get his fingers close together, he's fine with stretching. He can stretch as well as I can with all my years of playing, but he's got bigger hands than me, so he's got an advantage in that way. Whereas the other lady has got naturally smaller hands, so we'll find it easier to get the fingers close together into certain positions and certain chords, and that'll be simpler for her. So two examples at the opposite end of the spectrums as to how people's bodies are different, basically, and they might find things easier or simple. The way that I played it, I didn't really explain it. I've watched my video back to try and make sure I give the guy that gave me the question the best answer. I didn't really explain it other than to say, well, I find it easier to play that way, which is true, but it wasn't a great explanation of why I was doing that. So I wanted to come back to that and I just mention why I was playing the chord that way. If you find it easier to play another way, play another way. There's lots of different ways, as I've just showed you on the chord chart, that you can do it. So do what works for you. It's not necessarily a case of what's right by the absolute correct best form technique. If the chord sounds good, you want to try and play it the way that sounds good. If you're lucky and you've got confidence to play it a few different ways, going back to the C add 9 chord from the Sweet Child song, play it that way, or I can play it that way. For me, I'm okay playing it both ways, so when I've got the choice, I will choose to play it the way that's easiest, that fits in the context of the song. So I hope that clears up a little bit about which fingers to use. There's no such thing as doing it wrong as long as it sounds right. There's so many different techniques on the guitar, and you'll see so many different players playing things in so many different ways. The book isn't always the best thing. As long as your chord is played correctly, the way that you achieve it is a means to an end in playing it so that it sounds right and fits with the song. The songs that I've just talked about that I've already played, the Sweet Child of Mine and the Numb by Linkin Park, I'll put links to those if you want to see them in context. But the basic idea of this was just explaining why I chose to make that decision on that chord. A lot of people find that difficult just by bringing the thumb over the top. That's great. I find the other way difficult. Do whatever works best for you.